TCU dips into the JUCO ranks to pick up 2 defensive tackles for the 2025 class. We'll talk about those guys next here on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also find us on your favorite podcast platform. We'll get some of your thoughts in segment 3 as TCU gets ready to play Cincinnati this week in the regular season finale. 5 p.m. kick on ESPN Plus. We'll also get a feel for some of the things that Sonny Dykes said at his press conference this afternoon. But we start today on the recruiting front. That 2025 class, it's been quiet for most of the year, but lately TCU has been making some moves. Terry Shelton, wide receiver from Irving, Texas, that area. He's going to come play for the Frogs in 2025. He committed after decommitting from Arizona. They also landed Gil Jackson, flipped him from Texas Tech. But today we have 2 defensive tackles. I like that TCU is being aggressive on the D-line, and both of them are junior college players. Kelten Mickell from Jones College in Mississippi, and then Perry Cole from Trinity Valley Community College in Athens, Texas. Both guys have great size. Perry Cole is 6'3", 290 pounds. Mickell is listed at 6'2", 300 pounds. And I watched both of these guys in their highlight tapes today. The good news here is you got some immediate impact players. I mean, both players look physically like they can step in and play right away. They played some of the college level. One interesting thing that's happened in the transfer portal and the NIL era, I think every level except for the FBS has suffered a little bit. So with the group of 5 schools, which is still FBS, but they now struggle to hold on to people, to retain talent, to retain players. And there's the danger of, is this going to become just kind of the minor leagues for some of the Power 4 conferences? FCS, similar type thing. I mean, Ivy League schools, their season's just wrapped up. You see a lot of guys already in the transfer portal, impact players who have played a lot of snaps. They're looking to go elsewhere. Division II down to Division III. There's a Division III team here locally that I cover, UMHB, that used to be in the national title hunt each and every year. They're struggling a little bit right now. Part of that is they don't get the same talent that they used to because with NIL, with the portal, there's just less of a pool to choose from. And I think JUCO is kind of in that same mold at the moment. But watching the highlight tape for both these players, they look like dudes who can make an impact right away, especially in the case of Kelten Mickell. So Mickell, again, is from Mississippi, played at Jones College, and played his high school ball in Mississippi as well. He's rated as the number 4 player in the country overall in the junior college ranks, and the number 3 player in the state of Mississippi. I mentioned that frame earlier at 6'2", 300 pounds. They moved him a lot around the defensive line. So you saw him in nose guard sometimes. You saw him primarily, it seems like, in a 3 technique, which is outside shoulder of the guard. But then there were also times where we kicked out to a 5 technique, outside shoulder of the tackle. Good gap integrity. Did a nice job of reestablishing the line of scrimmage, understanding that he's not getting, he doesn't need to get hooked. He doesn't need to let that lineman cross his face, get that helmet on the other side of the shoulder pad. Good hand placement. The thing that impressed me the most, he just looks explosive. Like coming off the ball, the get off is really good. He's got a good bull rush, just that strength and power and using that athleticism, and seems to have a knack and an ability to shed blockers, get off blocks, and make tackles at the point of attack, throw guys around, kind of ragdoll some offensive linemen from time to time. In his freshman season at Jones College, according to their website, he was first team all-conference, had 34 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and a sack. I believe this year in his sophomore season, he had 3 sacks. So anytime you're talking about an interior defensive lineman, which is primarily where he lived during his time in the JUCO ranks, getting pressure, that's a big deal. And I like what TCU has done with some of their young guys at defensive tackle. Marcus Deal has been super effective when he's been in the lineup. Connor Lindgren hasn't played as much, but he did make some things happen in the Utah game. And it's had moments where you're like, okay, I see the vision here. They're losing some depth there. They're losing Hakeem Ajibalaiba. They're going to lose Caleb Fox, and also Tommy Mitchell. So you have rotational pieces that you have to replace. And they got Floyd Guidry coming in the 2025 class as a player straight from the high school ranks, which will be helpful. But is that guy going to be ready to play immediately? Tough to say. Typically in the trenches like this, you want players to have a time to ramp up. Travis Jackson lately has made an impact as well. But having a guy like Mickell who can come in and immediately just step in at one of those defensive line spots will be huge. And I think he's going to be an interior defensive lineman. That's where I see him projecting this year. There's just not a lot of dudes that are 300 pounds and can move like this. It's impressive when you watch him play, the explosion, the get off, being able to get to the ball carrier, wrap up, seems to have a good motor. And I think this is good evaluation by TCU. The other player, Perry Cole, Trinity Valley Community College in East Texas, down there in Athens, number 16 player in the country national in the junior college ranks, 8th ranked defensive lineman, 6'3", 290 pounds, had offers from Arizona, Coastal Carolina, Houston, and Hawaii. And watching Perry play, I think he can also be someone who steps in the rotation right away. Less explosiveness, it feels like, than Kelten Mickell off the ball, but a good motor, like had multiple plays that were just effort plays, chased down a wide receiver on a bubble screen 10 yards down the field. Another guy who was able to get to the quarterback, had 4 sacks this past season at Trinity Valley Community College. Good at the point of attack, good hand placement, able to get off the ball well. Perry, to me, even though they're similar size-wise, he just looks bigger. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean Perry looks more like your prototypical kind of nose tackle, inside, one technique type of player who can take on double teams and stand his ground, be effective at gap integrity, allow linebackers and safeties to come downhill and make plays, where Mickell looks more like an explosive defensive tackle. And you need both. I mean, you need both of those types of players at that position to have a well-rounded defense. I feel like this is, you can look at it one of two ways. TCU, are they finding kind of an undervalued resource here in the junior college ranks from a scouting perspective, where they can get good, talented players who have college experience? I feel like that's an optimistic way to look at it, and there's evidence to bear that out. Now, lately in the junior college world, they went and got Channing Canada, and I would say at this point that's a good pickup. Like, Channing Canada has turned into a legitimate starter for you. He struggled at times, but he's someone who contributes and plays each and every week. They also went and got Mason White, who ended up transferring after a year and didn't really play a whole lot. Doug Blue Eli was a defensive lineman. I believe they pulled him over in the offseason of 2022. Never panned out, never really came to fruition. But both these guys look like they, at least physically, they look the part. And it feels like they're players that can come in and play right away. Another thing about Kelten, going back to him for a second, that offer list is really impressive. Kansas State, which we know they know defense there in Manhattan. Auburn, Georgia, Boise State. He was committed to Liberty, Miami, Tennessee, and South Carolina, which under Shane Beamer, they've had some up and down years. This year they're trending up. But South Carolina has put together a really nasty defensive line, and they seem to know how to evaluate that position, how to get impact players there. So the fact that Kelten Mickell is getting an offer from them, I think, speaks really highly of who he is and what he can do. Another interesting note about Perry Cole, he played his high school ball at Palestine and in East Texas there, and he was also a punter. So, hey, if you need some special teams help, he can get in there and kick the ball, which is good to see. So Perry Cole from Trinity Valley Community College and Kelten Mickell from Jones College in Mississippi. Those are your two adds to this 2025 class. And TCU continues to find ways to get talent in this class. They're ranked number 22 in the country overall, according to 247 Sports, and now 27 commits and 9 defensive linemen in this class, which is pretty wild. Now, part of that is you got some outside linebackers or stud linebackers in this class that aren't your prototypical defensive linemen, but they still count in the position group. But still, when Andy Avalos took this job, it became very clear what he saw as like the priority to kind of stabilize, and that was the secondary room, the corners, your safeties, and then getting deeper on the D-line. So this is a good pickup for the Frogs in getting two guys that look like they're ready to step in and play right away. When we come back, what did Sonny Dykes say in his weekly press conference? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. FanDuel, it is where the game starts. Go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app. They make it easy for you. FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app, you can bet on NFL games, college football, college basketball. It's all there for you. FanDuel, where the game starts. $1, one $5 bet that you win gets you $150 in bonus bets. Again, that's one $5 bet that you win gets you $150 in bonus bets. FanDuel, try it out today. They make it super simple. FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. Give it a go. FanDuel, proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. So TCU plays Cincinnati. The Bearcats this weekend at Nippert Stadium in Ohio. And Cincinnati's lost 4 in a row. Now, they played good teams. They lost to Colorado 34-23, West Virginia 31-24, Iowa State 34-17, and then just got waxed by K-State in Manhattan. Final score was 41-15. But so they're 5-6 on the season. They're playing for bowl eligibility. They've had some impressive wins this year. They took down Arizona State at home, which is playing for a chance in the Big 12 title game. They shut out Houston, which has been a team that has given other Big 12 squads trouble so far this year. They got a good quarterback in Brendan Sorsby, who's from Dallas. He served for 2,653 yards, 18 touchdowns, only 6 picks. They've got a running back in Corey Kiner who's gone over 1,000 yards at 1,043 yards on the season. This is not a bad team, and it's going to be cold this week. And Sonny talked about that. He talked about the cold weather, high of like 39, and they're playing at 5 o'clock, so it's going to be chilly. He feels like the team's ready for that. I do worry about the lack of run game. I'm not sure this is a week where you can throw the ball 55 times. That being said, one area where I feel like TCU has really improved this year on offense is they have been able to push the ball down the field, but they also still live within 15 to 20 yards a lot of the time. So that puts more pressure on you to consistently execute and methodically get down the field and hit on those throws, which they're supposed to be high percentage throws. We saw last week there were times where Josh was a little late. He was behind on those throws, and you don't want to live in 2nd and 10 or 3rd and 10. I saw Sonny talking with Kendall Briles like right before halftime in the Arizona game, and just reading his lips, it sounded like he was saying we have to find a way to get more on first down because they were living and dying in 3rd and long situations in the first half of that ball game after the first couple of drives. But with all the kind of bubble screens and quick game stuff and RPO aspects of the passing game, that should help. It's still going to be chilly out there, though, and I would think you're going to see a pretty heavy dose of the Savion Williams package because this team's just continued to show, at least so far, they can't run the ball in the traditional way with their running backs. Maybe this is the week, but it just seems unlikely that suddenly in week 12 you're going to figure this out and do it at a high level. So that'll be one big challenge. he says he likes what they're doing right now, feels like they're playing better, feels like they're in a good rhythm. He mentioned that that's a tough place to play, which I haven't watched a ton of Cincinnati football, to be honest. I mean, I've seen a couple of their home games over the past year plus while they're in the Big 12. It doesn't shock me, and night game should be a good one. A lot at stake for them. You wonder, I mean, coming off an embarrassing loss like that, what's the response? Are they fired up and ready to get after it, play at a high level, rally around their coach, or do you see a team that's kind of packing it in? On defense, they've been pretty solid this year. I mean, not amazing, but it's not the defenses that we've seen over the last few weeks where the numbers are just horrible. And from a scoring perspective, you know, they gave up 41 points to Kansas State. And some teams have scored over 30 on them, but people haven't gone crazy. Texas Tech put up 44. They got a really big physical nose tackle in Dante Corleone in the middle, who is a game wrecker. And so big week for your interior offensive line. And James Brockermeyer and Colton Deary, Carson Bruno, Remington Strickland. When he works himself in the lineup, you have to find a way to block that guy because he can – nothing wrecks a play faster than just pressure from the nose tackle or the defensive tackle, which is why I'm excited about the two defensive tackles that TCU picked up in the transfer portal, at least from a commitment perspective, over the past few days. So that's got to be your first priority is get him blocked. So Cincinnati is a talented team. I was watching Scott Satterfield's press conference as well, the Cincinnati coach. And the thing that stood out to me, it's always interesting to hear what opposing coaches or opposing media is saying about TCU. He's like, when we turned on the film, he kept coming back to the receiver room is just insanely talented. And he talked about Savion Williams, talked about Jack Bash, but they've just got multiple dudes who can go get the ball, who can make plays. I'm sure Eric McAllister caught their eye with what he did against Arizona and what he's done throughout the season, honestly. Yeah, I'm not sure we fully understand how blessed we've been with that group of guys this year. They just make plays, and they've been getting the job done. And I think Josh Hoover's a really good quarterback. But I also feel like he's benefited from just having some dudes at the skill positions. And running back-wise, it hasn't worked out. But passing game, it's been outstanding. And on that note, Jack Besh, not a finalist for the Biletnikoff Award, which is disappointing to me. But Travis Hunter at Colorado, Teratua McMillan in Arizona, and then Nick Nash at San Jose State. Nick Nash is leading the country in receiving. Travis Hunter is a really exciting two-way player. I don't know if he should be there as a receiver, but he's a great player. And we saw what McMillan at Arizona brings to the table. He's outstanding. I feel like if Jack could have put together a better performance against Arizona, that would have helped. Only had 25 yards. Did cross the 1,000-yard threshold for the season, which was cool to see. Just couldn't do much outside of that in the game on Saturday against the Wildcats. So should be a fun matchup. I think the Cincinnati team is better than their record indicates, and have to find a way to play at a high level. They can't take this group lightly, and it's going to be difficult on the road in the cold weather. And I know, in the grand scheme of things, the stakes aren't super high for TCU, but 8-4 as opposed to 7-5, that's a big difference to me. I think 8-4 going into a bowl game with a chance to get to 9 wins, you're feeling really good. 7-5 is not the end of the world, but it would be disappointing given how well you played the last couple of weeks, how they've taken care of the football, and just the way that they have really answered the bell since that loss heading into the bye week and that debacle going to the Houston game. So one more chance this regular season to see the Frogs in action. 5 p.m. in Cincinnati on ESPN+. We'll have Keys to the Game on Friday. This is Locked On Horned Frogs. When we come back, we'll get some of your thoughts. It's your team every day. So quick housekeeping note, no show on Thanksgiving Day. Going to take that day off from podcasting. Hope you guys enjoy a beautiful Thanksgiving with your families. And I'm thankful for y'all. I mean, I try to say that as much as I can. This past month was the biggest month in the history of Locked On Horned Frogs from a YouTube perspective, which is really cool. The show it's been slow. It's been really organic. You guys have put up with me and the bumps along the way. And it's still not like the biggest podcast in the world or even the biggest podcast in the TCU universe, but I'm really happy with how it's sort of progressed and just slowly gotten more traction in this space. So I hope you have a good Thanksgiving. I'll be back Friday with Keys to the Game, predictions, and then I'll have a post-game show on Saturday night after that Cincinnati ball game. That'll be the end of the regular season, which is crazy to think about. And we'll get, bowl game reaction on that Sunday afternoon. Or I guess now we'll have one more week because of the conference championship week. So in about 8 days after that wraps up, we'll get bowl game reaction. Some of your thoughts from yesterday's show where I talked with Matt Jennings. Vince Pryor, who's not the biggest fan of the Sonny, says, I once asked my dad in elementary school, can I get an allowance if I get all A's? And he said, why would I pay you for something that you're supposed to do? No. And his point is Sonny beating beatable teams does not give him hope. He's just not convinced. He thinks the seniors are playing at a high level, but he's not convinced. And listen, I get it. Like, you can't totally separate what they're doing from the schedule because it's a big part of it. Optimistically, though, I think they're playing at a much more – I think they're playing at a higher level, and I think they're just playing as a more complete football team in the second half of the season. Now have they gotten leaps and bounds better? I don't know. It's kind of hard to totally say because they just beat up on two of the worst teams in the league. But I don't think in week 3 or 4 they could have done what they did to Arizona and Oklahoma State like they did this past few weeks. I don't buy it because they weren't a good team then. And I don't think they're a great team, but I feel like they're trending in the right direction. And I think at the moment they can compete with just about anybody in the league. And I wouldn't have said that all year long. BB says we need to go get a running back in the portal. Yeah, I'm all for that. I don't know what their perspective is going to be. I mean, I think you could make the argument you've got a number of guys who have had good moments. It's just about finding some consistency, and you can hope that happens in the offseason. But I definitely think you got to get somebody at the very least to just have some more competition in that room moving forward. Tommy says he thinks there might be more of a need for a wide receiver in the portal than an offensive tackle. He feels like they're really like the guys they picked up in these 2 high school classes, and it's really hard to get a stud at the offensive tackle position in the portal. At some point, you need to let the high school guys you recruited be the guy. And that might be how it ends up. And I understand your point, Tommy. I don't feel super comfortable with rolling out the young guys next year, but I understand at a certain point you got to kind of take that risk and say, okay, we evaluated these guys, we're trying to develop them. We have to see if they can play and what their potential is when they hit the field. I would just like to see one kind of anchor type of player on the line. But yeah, it's expensive. It really is. Like, you're making an investment. I feel like that's a position though where you can make an investment and feel good about it. Jacob Langford says, to quote the great Ryan Thomas, it's been a tough couple of weeks for the Fire Sonny Dykes squad. It's really turned. I mean, it's turned in a big way. Jim Norris says putting Savion at running back was huge. It made a real difference. It has. I mean, it's changed the complexion of this offense. I think it's made it more dangerous. I feel like it's brought some energy and enthusiasm to this team that it was needing. And it was a really good decision by Kendall Browse and Sonny Dykes to make that move. And I think another part of that is they found ways to diversify what they're doing with those looks so that defenses haven't been able to key in on it really well and just completely shut it down. Oklahoma State did a nice job, and they changed some things up against Arizona and had some more success. One poster says he thinks the majority of the initial misevaluation of the running back room was because of the poor gelling of the trenches at the start of the year. He hopes they're better next year. He doesn't want to give up on Cook and Payne. Yeah, I can buy that. I mean, you got to block. I would say there are times where I felt like the running backs weren't, one, seeing the crease very well, and then also just not getting there fast enough. But it's all working in concert. So if you're struggling up front, then your running backs are going to struggle. And that's just football 101. And then Frog Fan says he actually had a women's basketball thought. ESPN gives the Frogs an 8.7% chance of them winning against Notre Dame in their matchup predictor. That seems crazy low for a top 25 matchup. Well, we'll see. I think, the thing about women's basketball traditionally is the upper echelon of the sport is just so much better than everybody else. Even when we're talking about like top 25, the top 5 schools in the country have been head and shoulders better than other teams. Now, I think that's been narrowed by the transfer portal, and we just saw South Carolina go down. It's another prove-it game for TCU, right? Like, they got to go prove that they can hang with the best teams in the country, and this is another chance to do that against Notre Dame. Happy Thanksgiving. I'll see you guys on Friday. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. We are free and available wherever it is you get your podcasts.